If someone had told me in 2021 that I would be living in France, I wouldn't have believed it. In this video, I'll tell you why I ended up here, how much effort it took, and why moving didn't solve my problems, but instead made me see them differently. I left Russia at the beginning of 2022. First, my wife and I went to Georgia because many of my friends were going there and it didn't require a visa. Georgia was wonderful and I generally love this country. However, since we couldn't get a residence permit there at the time, meaning no visas to other countries, we decided to move to Serbia. Our friends had already obtained residence permits there, and it seems like an easy option. In reality, this was misconception. Immigration and moving are always difficult, more or less, but still challenging. After getting documents in Serbia, my wife and I realized we want to try getting a residence permit in EU country. I started asking friends who had already moved to Europe and accidentally found out about the passport talent visa in France. Honestly, I never dreamed about living in France. Of course, I had watched French movies and read French authors, but it always seemed like unreachable. Then, in December 2023, my wife and I decided we should give a try. Through friends, I found a lawyer who agreed to take our case and guide us until we take a residence permit. So began 6 long months of gathering documents. From the moment we moved to Serbia until recently, all I did was collect paperwork and work my regular job non-stop. This was quite a challenging time for me. Every day felt like Groundhog Day. I was emotionally drained, accumulated a lot of fatigue, and didn't see any rest on the horizon. At this time, walks in the park, talking with friends, and through that soon everything would end, supported me greatly. After 6 months, we finally submitted the documents to the consulate and received an invitation for interview a month later. Eventually, we got a visa to enter France for 3 months, convertible to residence permit. At that moment, we were generally happy and excited. My first feelings were mixed. On the one hand, I couldn't believe we actually got the visas. On the other, I felt right, like it was meant to be. In Paris, I had booked accommodation for our first couple of weeks. Given my experience of previous 2 moves, I thought it will be easy to find a long-term rental in Paris. How wrong I was. We arrived during the peak of the Olympics, and there weren't many long-term rental offers. I have no idea how competitive the rental market in Paris was. After several failed attempts and seeing with my own eyes a queue of 100 people to view an unfurnished apartment, I felt extremely disappointed and realized we had no chance of renting something without a residence permit. We were upset, but didn't give up, as we still had a few other cities in mind. We decided to move to Lyon. My friend told me prices were lower and there were more options. At this time, we continued working, which was very tough. In Lyon, we were unlucky with our first apartment. It was on the 5th floor without an elevator and completely run down. Although we paid 2 weeks in advance, we couldn't stay there more than one night. We urgently searched for another short-term rental. We found one a bit away from the center and moved in. Unfortunately, my attempts to find a long-term apartment failed again. Sometimes it happens. You arrive in a city or country and things just don't click. You can't quickly find comfortable cafe or shops, make new friends easily, or find rental options that you like. That's exactly how it was for us in those weeks. Clearly, Leon didn't work out. By this point, I was starting to get very worried. We had moved to a country we longed to live in, yet we couldn't find a place to call home. My wife and I sat down to discuss where to go next. We considered Marseille, where we had some friends at the time, but by then we realized Paris had stolen our hearts, and we want to stay closer to it. I found a website with crime statistic in France, took a map, this database, and Numbeo, and began looking for our next destination. After several hours, I discovered Chartres, a fairly large city with low crime rates and reasonable prices, just 1 hour from Paris. So we went there without knowing anyone and with no big expectations. In the first few days, we explored the city. It felt like we're walking in movie scenery rather than a real city. Honestly, I still occasionally feel this way. It's that beautiful. We rented daily accommodation, continued working, and looking for long-term rental. One day, during a coffee break, I stumbled upon an exhibition of associations, including Ukrainian and Russian communities. Discovering such a large community here was unexpected and joyful, giving me a sense of safety, knowing that people nearby speak my native language. I met the organizer of Russian diaspora, and the next day she offered me a rental option. It was surprising and pleasant. I hadn't felt such gratitude in a long time. Unfortunately, the apartment was too small for us. A few days later, I found a great apartment in the city center. Despite the landlord not speaking English and me not speaking French, we somehow managed to agree. Finally, we had suitable place to live. Around the same time, our residence permits were approved for several years. So, from the initial idea to move to France to obtaining a residence permit and renting suitable accommodation took 9 months. After 3 years of immigration in 3 countries, I feel more confident and my self-esteem has improved. I've developed resilience to stress and the ability to adapt quickly. On the other hand, I've accumulated a lot of fatigue. I now better understand people and their behavior. It's become clear how much behavior depends on societal norms, which in turn are shaped by the information people consume. I often encountered situations where my views didn't match others. If our core values aligned, we could always find common ground, but if not, disputes never ended. I've realized that the phrase moving won't solve your personal problems, it's absolutely true. With more time for self-reflection, I've noticed a personal crisis that's begun in middle 2022, which I hadn't recognized earlier. For 3 years, it only felt like accumulated fatigue. Indeed, immigration didn't change my internal problems related to this crisis. I was simply too busy to notice. But I'm glad I've recognized it now and started working on it. If you have any question about my experience or about life in France, please write it on the comments. I'll be glad to answer it. And if you live nearby Chartres, please contact with me. I will be glad to meet and make new friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and we will meet soon.